What if some of the most painful failures in your life never actually happened, yet you have been living as though they did? Behind a heavy velvet curtain, Adrian Cole stood with both hands resting above the keys of an old theater piano, while hundreds of people entered the auditorium on the other side. He could hear their footsteps, their quiet conversations, and the soft sound of programs being unfolded. His original composition was waiting in front of him, but his fingers were trembling too much to touch the first note. In his mind, Adrian had already watched this moment end badly hundreds of times. He had imagined playing the wrong note. He had heard laughter that had not happened. He had pictured disappointed faces that did not yet exist. He had watched himself walk away in shame before he had even taken his seat. But tonight, for the first time, reality was about to give him an answer. My name is Second Wind. Today we're going to explore a story about a man who spent years preparing for failure, until one unfinished performance forced him to discover the difference between being ready and being alive. Adrian was 36 years old and worked as a sound technician at a small community theater in an old part of the city. He was the person everyone called when a microphone stopped working, when a sound cue played too early, or when a nervous actor needed someone calm beside them. Adrian was quiet, dependable, and almost invisible by choice. He knew every loose floorboard backstage, every curtain rope, and every small sound the theater made after midnight. People trusted him because he never seemed to panic. What they did not know was that Adrian had spent most of his life in a private state of fear. Every evening, after the actors left and the theater became silent, he would sit at the piano near the stage and play music he had written himself. His melodies were soft, honest, and full of emotions he could never explain in conversation. But the moment he heard a door open or footsteps in the hallway, he stopped playing. He kept his music hidden inside a black notebook beneath the sound desk, because creating music felt safe only when nobody could judge it. One night, while Adrian believed the building was empty, he played a melody he had been working on for months. It began with a few uncertain notes, then slowly grew warmer, as though someone was finding their way home after being lost for years. Adrian closed his eyes as he played. He did not notice Evelyn Marlowe standing quietly behind one of the curtains. Evelyn was a retired stage actress who now volunteered in the wardrobe department. At 68, she moved more slowly than she once had, but her eyes missed very little. She listened until Adrian finished, then left without making a sound. The next morning, while Adrian checked the speakers, Evelyn stood beside him and asked, "Who wrote the music you were playing last night?" Adrian froze for a moment, then continued adjusting a cable. "I don't remember," he said. Evelyn raised one eyebrow. "That is unusual. Most people remember something that beautiful." Adrian avoided her eyes and changed the subject. Evelyn did not push him, but from that moment, she began watching him more carefully. During the following week, the theater was preparing for its biggest production of the year. The lead role belonged to a 17-year-old actress named Mia Torres. Mia was talented, hardworking, and deeply afraid of disappointing everyone. During one rehearsal, she forgot the same line 3 times. On the 4th attempt, she stopped in the middle of the stage, lowered her head, and whispered, "I don't think I should do this. Someone else should take the role." The director, Thomas Reed, was dealing with a lighting problem and did not hear her, but Adrian did. He walked onto the stage and stood a few feet away. "You forgot one line," he said gently. Mia shook her head. "It's not just one line. What if this happens on opening night? What if everyone is watching and my mind goes completely blank? Adrian looked at the empty seats in front of them. You don't need to know that you'll be perfect, he said. You only need to stay in the scene long enough to discover what comes next. Mia looked at him. What if nothing comes next? Adrian gave her a small smile. Then look at the person standing beside you. Listen, breathe. The scene will find another way forward. Mia nodded and tried again. This time she forgot part of the line, but she did not stop. She looked at her scene partner, continued in different words, and reached the end. From the back of the theater, Evelyn watched Adrian give Mia advice he had never been willing to follow himself. Later that evening, Evelyn found Adrian in the sound booth. His black music notebook was lying open beside the control panel. She recognized several melodies that matched the emotional rhythm of the play perfectly. You wrote all of this, she said. Adrian quickly closed. You shouldn't be looking at that. You left it open. That doesn't mean it was meant for you. His voice was sharper than usual. Evelyn remained calm. Why are you hiding it? Adrian picked up the notebook. Because it's mine. That isn't an answer. Adrian turned away. Not everything needs to be shared. Evelyn studied his tense shoulders. No, but some things are hidden because they are private, and some things are hidden because we are afraid they may matter. Adrian looked at her then, visibly angry. You don't know anything about it. Evelyn waited. The silence between them became uncomfortable, but she did not fill it. Finally, Adrian sat down. He stared at the closed notebook in his hands and said, When I was 15, I performed at a school recital. I had practiced for months. I knew every note. But when I walked onto the stage, I heard 2 students laughing backstage. I thought they were laughing at me. My hands froze. I played the wrong notes, stopped halfway through, and walked away. Evelyn listened without interrupting. Adrian continued. After that, every time I thought about performing, I heard the same laughter. I could see the same faces. I knew exactly how it would end. Evelyn quietly asked, Who was laughing? Adrian frowned. I just told you. 2 students backstage. Were they laughing at you? Adrian hesitated. I assume they were. Did either of them say anything about your performance? No. Did anyone in the audience tell you that you were terrible? Adrian looked down. No. Evelyn leaned slightly closer. Then how much of that memory is what actually happened, and how much was added later by fear? Adrian did not answer. For more than 20 years, he had treated his interpretation of that moment as undeniable evidence. He had replayed it so often that it no longer felt like an assumption. It felt like a fact. Before he could respond, Thomas called from the stage. A more urgent problem had arrived. The production's pianist had fallen and injured his wrist. Opening night was less than 24 hours away. Thomas tried calling several musicians, but none were available. Without live music, important transitions in the play would lose their timing and emotional effect. The actors had rehearsed their movements around the score. Thomas considered using recorded tracks, but several scenes required the music to respond naturally to the actors. Mia quietly told him, Adrian has already written music for the whole play. Adrian turned toward her in shock. Evelyn said nothing. Thomas looked at Adrian. Is that true? Adrian tightened his grip around the notebook. It was never meant for the performance. Can you play it? Thomas asked. That's not the point. Can you play it? Adrian looked toward the stage, then toward the empty piano bench. Yes. Thomas took a breath. Then we need you. Adrian immediately shook his head. No. I work behind the stage. I don't perform. Mia stepped closer. Your music helped me understand the character. When I heard you playing last week, I finally understood what the final scene was supposed to feel like. Adrian looked at Evelyn. You told her? Mia answered, No. I heard you too. Adrian suddenly realized that the music he had protected so carefully had already reached people. The possibility should have encouraged him, but instead, he felt exposed. Use the recorded tracks, he said. Thomas explained that the tracks would not match the actor's timing. Adrian still refused. That night, while the theater grew quiet, Evelyn led him to a storage room behind the stage. From an old cabinet, she removed a thick, worn cue book. Its pages contained decades of lighting changes, entrances, music notes, forgotten lines, and handwritten corrections. Adrian knew the book well. It was the theater's record of what was supposed to happen during a performance. You trust this book, Evelyn said. Because it tells us what comes next, Adrian replied. Evelyn opened it to a page covered with notes written by previous actors and stage managers. One line read, Missed the entrance, continued anyway. Another said, Forgot the final sentence, partner saved the scene. A third note read, Lights failed during the second act. Audience thought it was intentional. Adrian slowly turned the pages. Mistakes were recorded everywhere. Broken props, lost costumes, late music cues, forgotten lines. Yet beside many of them were words such as continued, recovered, and best performance of the season. Evelyn opened the cue book near the final act, where several pages had been damaged by water. The words were faded and almost impossible to read. Adrian ran his fingers above the ruined ink. How did they finish the performance without these cues? He asked. Evelyn answered, They listened to each other. Adrian looked at her. Evelyn continued, A cue book does not promise that nothing will go wrong. It only reminds us where to return when it does. Adrian sat in silence. He had spent most of his life trying to remove every possible surprise before taking action. He believed confidence meant knowing exactly what would happen next, but the cue book revealed something different. Every meaningful performance contained uncertainty. The people on stage did not succeed because nothing failed. They succeeded because they remained present when it did. Evelyn closed the book, but before Adrian left, she said, There is something else you should know. Her voice had changed. It was softer now. I was at your school on the day of that recital. Adrian stared at her. Evelyn explained that she had been helping with another performance in the same building. She remembered two students laughing backstage because one of them had accidentally worn part of his costume backward. They were not laughing at you, she said. Adrian looked as if the room had shifted beneath him. How can you be sure? Because I was standing near them. Adrian's eyes filled with anger and disbelief. You're telling me I lost 20 years because of a costume? Evelyn shook her head. No, I'm telling you that you allowed an unanswered question to become a permanent answer. Adrian turned away from her. The truth did not immediately free him. It hurt. He thought about every opportunity he had refused, every melody he had hidden, and every time he had chosen safety because of laughter that had never belonged to him. Evelyn gave him time, then said, Even if they had been laughing at you, would one painful moment have deserved the rest of your life? That question stayed with Adrian long after she left. He sat alone at the piano and imagined opening night again. His mind produced the same familiar scenes. He saw himself missing notes. He heard the audience whispering. He imagined Thomas regretting the decision, Mia losing confidence, and Evelyn looking at him with pity. The images felt real, but for the first time, Adrian recognized them for what they were. They were rehearsals, not memories, warnings, not prophecies. He opened the old cue book to an empty margin and wrote 2 words: afraid, continuing. The next evening, the theater filled completely. Behind the curtain, Adrian sat at the piano while his hands trembled. Mia stood nearby in costume, breathing too quickly. She whispered, "What if I forget everything?" Adrian looked at her and repeated the words he had once given her. "Stay in the scene long enough to discover what comes next." Mia nodded. The curtain opened. Adrian played the first note. It was slightly softer than he intended. The second came late. For a moment, panic moved through his chest, but he continued. The actors entered. His music followed them, uncertain at first, then slowly more confident. During the second act, Mia entered too early and forgot an important line. Adrian saw fear appear on her face. Instead of stopping, he softened the melody and repeated a short musical phrase. Mia listened, looked at her scene partner, and found another way into the moment. She continued. Later, one of the stage lights failed, leaving half the stage darker than planned. Thomas prepared to stop the performance, but Adrian changed the music. The melody became quieter and more intimate, matching the unexpected darkness. The actors adjusted. The scene felt more honest than it ever had during rehearsal. Every mistake Adrian had once believed would destroy the performance became something they responded to together. Near the final scene, Adrian reached the last page of his composition. Beyond that point, the music was unfinished. He had always planned to complete it, but fear had kept him from deciding how it should end. His hands stopped above the keys. The theater became silent. It was the exact silence he had feared since he was 15. For one terrible second, he believed his mind had been right. Then he looked toward Mia. She was standing in the center of the stage, waiting for the next cue. Adrian remembered the damaged pages of the old book. He remembered Evelyn's words. They listened to each other. Adrian watched Mia breathe. He noticed the slow movement of the other actors and the emotion in their faces. Then he played a note that had never existed before. Another followed. He stopped trying to predict the ending and began listening to the moment. For the first time in his life, Adrian composed music publicly as it was being heard. The audience remained completely still, but now he understood their silence differently. They were not laughing, they were not judging, they were listening. When the final note faded, the theater remained quiet for one breath. Then the audience rose and applauded. Adrian did not become famous that night. No producer offered him a contract. His fear did not disappear. But something more important changed. Reality had finally been allowed to speak louder than the future he had imagined. After the performance, Mia hugged him and said, "When I forgot what came next, your music reminded me to stay." Later, Adrian returned to the cue book and looked at the words he had written. Afraid, continuing. Beneath them, someone had added another sentence in Mia's handwriting. It said, "We stayed." Months later, Adrian began hosting a small evening at the theater where ordinary people shared work they had been hiding until it felt perfect. Some brought unfinished songs. Others brought paintings, poems, business ideas, speeches, or letters they had been too afraid to send. Adrian called the event the unrehearsed hour. Before every meeting, his mind still imagined what might go wrong, but he no longer confused imagination with destiny. One evening, a nervous young musician stood behind the curtain and asked him, what if I forget everything? Adrian smiled and answered, then stay long enough to discover what comes next. Have you ever avoided something because your mind showed you an ending that had not happened yet? How many decisions in your life have been shaped by imagined embarrassment, rejection, or failure? Tonight, choose one action you have delayed because of fear. Write down what you are afraid might happen. Then write one simple response you could take if it does. You do not need proof that everything will go perfectly. You only need to remember that you are capable of responding when it does not. Preparation should help you enter your life, not become the place where you hide from it. Do not spend your entire life rehearsing moments you are too afraid to live. If this story touched your heart, please like this video, share it with someone who may need to hear it, and subscribe to Second Wind Tales for more meaningful stories about hope, courage, and personal growth. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next story.